ready and seated to get down. And we have our next round 6 coming up right now. It's going to be
Round 6. Who do we got?
John Owen on the left, Grant Shen on the right. Both of these players are 5-0 here to start the day.
John Owen versus Grant Shen. I mean, Swiss round 6, these players have already got a lot of Pokemon under their belts just from today only. And this is sort of that midway point where the cracks start to show. We've got John on the Arceus deck, of course, just a classic list. Arceus Duraludon, I see here from John. Duraludon was a deck that was sort of whispered about. I think that the resurgence of Mewtwo V-Union has really drawn people back towards these control decks. Meanwhile, Grant Shen on the Mew VMAX, a list that can, again, do a lot of work if you have really put in the time on it. This is the Meloetta list version.
No, Meloetta less.
Yes.
I see where you're going now. Yeah, it is going to be a pretty good match.
The London version.
the London version.
The cultured version? Who knows?
But with Arceus Duraludon, this is a deck that has already taken down a Regionals victory. It is a deck that is very scary, good against Palkia. You're not really going to have that big bench. You're relying on your 1 Duraludon VMAX, 2 Duraludon VMAX throughout the whole game. The Arceus is going to be able to get it set up. And you're going to have to battle through a Mew VMAX deck that plays cards like Echoing Horn and Marnies to disrupt your hand. That's something we usually don't have to deal with when you're playing against a Mew deck, is hand disruption, but this is going to be a full 3 copies.
Right. The Duraludon as well, you know, you think you'd be able to wall out a Mew VMAX, but you've got to remember that Max Miracle attack. You still can punch through that effect, that Skyscraper ability, and still deal damage even when you have the special energy attached. It's just, it was that final piece that made everybody roll their eyes way back at the resurgence of the Mew VMAX meta when it rose to that clear tier 0, tier 1 status. Where players are like, well, it just can counter all of its counters. What do I do? But Duraludon is back. It never truly went away. The threat of it has been around, as you said. But we've got the Hyper Potion in this list, just trying to outlast the Mew damage. And we'll have to see if this new variant, right, running less explosive damage, trying to run a more balanced, disruptive game, is going to preserve that decent matchup versus this OG, you know, control deck.
We will have to see, and it looks like our players
just getting
are
set up.
Set up. Looks like they're ready to get the prizes down, and this is going to be pretty big too. Echoing Horn is probably the most important card in this matchup for Grant, just because you're not going to really want to take down Duraludon VMAXs. You want to take down the Arceus Vs and stuff like that a little easier.
Right. But 2 Genesect in the prizes is going to slow Grant down a lot. Hopefully, you know, with 2 Genesect, you can still make miracles happen. If your deck is thinning properly, but having these 2 in the prizes, especially versus a deck that is built to resist giving you prizes, it's going to be a very tall order to get the Genesects down and actually get the proper amount of card draw going. When you slow a Mew deck down like this, it gives the Duraludon deck so much more time to get set up and get solidified. So Arceus V starts in the active for John Owen, double turbo energy attachment, and already a Duraludon V set up, ready to evolve and get that going. We've got Crystal Cave as well, have that repeated healing and just try to weather the storm. Grant being forced to start with the Genesect V in the active. It seems a bit clunky at first. Fortunately, there's not really too big of a punish for this, but at the very least, you have one of your missing draw engines ready to go.
You got cards like Cross Switcher and Escape Rope to help you get out of the active spot. Even just extra double turbo energy, especially since you're not really going to be attacking this turn with no access to Fusion Strike energies and less of Sparkles. So you're really just going to take this turn to set up, have a few Mew V on the bench down, and hope your opponent doesn't have that Arceus V-Star.
Yeah, what is so interesting about this matchup is just now how it's completely shifted from I'm going to try to get this explosive start and beat the Duraludon before it gets established, but now Grant is going to be playing a much slower game plan that wants to strike this deck head on, as you said, with the Echoing Horn and play that counter control game rather than trying to get out ahead of it with tempo. But Battle VIP Pass, turn 1, is going to gas up this list. It's going to be firing as much as it can. Grant already seeing the writing on the wall with the other Genesects in the prizes, but the other 2 are recovered and now in play.
Yeah, it's looking like a pretty nice hand here from Grant. He does have the double cross switcher in hand to get out of the active spot and the escape rope to go along with it. Maybe you don't want both of those cards because you might have to discard or use them when you don't want to, but being able to drag a Duraludon V into the active spot can disrupt John a lot if he doesn't have the right cards.
With the Duraludon in the active spot as well, it's just a sitting duck, right? But unless you can evolve it, it's still just a 220 HP Pokemon V. It does have that ability hard code. It takes a little bit of reduced damage. But of course, you know, maybe you set up that 2-turn knockout. If you get that damage on it early, that is still going to stick, hopefully, before it is able to evolve. But Grant Shen still trying to make the best of what he's been dealt with the Rotom Phone, still thinning the hand down beautifully. Even when a Mew deck has a couple Genesects missing, it's still very formidable, has a lot of the ability to thin through the list.
I wouldn't recommend reading it. It's kind of embarrassing on stream.
Yeah, we'll have to see
Deep shuffle here.
Yeah, what Grant ends up doing with the rest of this turn. Does have that Oricorio on the top of the deck thanks to that Rotom Phone. And with either playing the double cross switcher or the escape rope, we'll be able to thin his hand down enough to grab that. And then from there, you can draw up to 5 cards since you have another Fusion Strike Pokemon in play.
Yep, so there we go. Uses the Fusion Strike system to draw up to 4. Gets the Oricorio.
But again, it's just...
And Grant also playing this a very even pace, not like burning the power tablet you would normally see a Mew do just because they want that extra 1 or 2 cards. This list isn't built around like going for very aggressive card draw, and especially with 2 Genesects prize, you have to be a lot more stingy with your resources because you know you can't just draw into outs.
And like you said, really had the Ultra Ball, didn't want to use it because you have no more Genesect to go grab. You have those double cross switcher in hand, boss's orders, that power tablet. You really just can't get rid of anything. But the Pokegear does find a Marnie, so some disruption coming up.
When John sees that there's only 2 Genesect in play, it is going to be a little bit harder for Grant to, you know, draw through for the cards that are needed in this matchup. At the end of the day, Grant does need to attack this Duraludon V, find these Echoing Horns to bring back the Arceus. The Echoing Horn's not going to matter until you get the KO on the Arceus V or the Arceus V Star. So a lot more work still needs to be done before Grant even can attempt to start winning the game in a true sense.
The one awkward thing about this Arceus Duraludon deck, though, is if you don't have access to Starbirth, that powerful V-Star ability from that Arceus V-Star, you're not really going to be doing a lot. All of your card draw is either locked into Marnie or Avery. You have... I guess Professor's Research too, but not able to find that off of the Pokegears.
And with a deck like this, when you know that your opponent is trying to do very specific things to you, you have to preserve those cards. It's a heartbreaker when you have to research away, you know, your hyper potions or things of that nature that you need to save for future turns. It can become quite detrimental. But this Marnie rewarding John with the Duraludon VMAX, the Arceus V-Star. And now we have access to that Starbirth to find those missing pieces at a later turn. Just goes for it right now, actually.
Yeah, need to grab that switch, get that Duraludon V out of the active spot so you can use that Trinity Nova and not quite take the knockout thanks to that Oricorio, but we'll be able to charge up that Duraludon VMAX on the bench and get things going for the future turns.
Beautiful with the Starbirth. And this is the other way that Starbirth is used, right? Sometimes players like to save it for later in the game to find, you know, that boss's orders or like whatever that missing final card you need to really close out a game. But when you use it early like this, it really signals that John is confident that this Duraludon is just going to naturally win once it gets set up. You're using the Starbirth to complete your setup. Has the switch, has the V-Star in the active now with double turbo energy, so Oricorio will protect Mew V. This tech has really been coming through on today's broadcast.
Oh, Oricorio. Okay, yeah, sorry.
And with that, just 160 damage on that Mew V. And
How much does that
interesting to
increase
note
the
that
HP by?
John opted to grab the second
Oh, minus
Duraludon
1, yeah,
VMAX
okay.
instead of something like a Professor's Research for next turn. That hand is a little lacking. I think it's just a boss's orders and an Arceus V. But with that attack, 3 energy is now on the Duraludon VMAX, and that means it's scary.
Once, yeah, it's set up now. Even if Arceus V-Star goes down, it's done its job. It's set up the Duraludon VMAX. It's used the Starbirth ability. So now you're just ready to go. John can get very punished, as you said, though, without getting the Professor's Research. You're relying on your next couple top decks to find Hyper Potions and Crystal Cave to just start weathering the storm of the attacks here from Grant. These Mews are ready to go. Hits the Cramomatic as well. And with just 2 Genesects, I think that Grant normally would be too far behind if this was like a Palkia matchup, something where you need to be a bit more aggressive. But against Duraludon, you have way more time to naturally get your setup. And we saw this again with the how Andrew had plenty of time versus Radiant Charizard. When your opponent's playing an archetype that gives you time, you are very happy to accept the terms to say, well, now I just have more time to get my setup. I'm not going to get snowballed out of the game.
And with that, Cramomatic does find the double turbo energy and has a hand of Marnie, just opts to use it. But this is actually going to be beneficial for John here because John's hand was not that very good. And now
So
we'll have to see how it turns out.
Evolution Incense, Ultra Ball, Hyper Potions looking at Professor's Research? No.
The Hyper Potion is good. The rest of it is basically the same thing.
Yeah, so still has 1 useful piece, but no card draw. And sometimes you can get a little bit too overzealous with your Starbirth, right? Luke, in the interview segment, was talking about how you have to think so many turns ahead with these Arceus decks. And if you didn't plan for, oh, well, I need Professor's Research, and so I can keep drawing through my list, you end up in perhaps a dead-handed scenario. But Grant now, with a Mew V setup, just needs to find a Mew V Max here to start the, the Technoblast, the Max Miracles, raining down onto John Owen's side of the board.
It's such an awkward hand here from Grant. Had the double cross switcher yet again, but has the Ultra Ball to find the Mew VMAX. Opts for the cross switcher on that Duraludon VMAX without any energy. And with the cards drawn, you can actually Ultra Ball them away to find the Mew VMAX, or just draw it normally. Might as well.
So now we have the Mew VMAX set up with the double turbo energy, with the choice belt. And now we just can get the Max Miracle just punching at this Duraludon until hopefully it eventually will go down. John only has 1 Hyper Potion.
One thing about that Mew VMAX, though, it does need to be evolved onto the other one just because that Mew V came into play. So that should be on the damaged Mew V, but that is the only way to get Max Miracle as an attack. It's 2 Psychic Energy.
Oh, yeah, that is right. Yeah.
Usually you think, yeah, Fusion Strike energies, all that, it's fine. No, like you can only cross Fusion Strike for a Mew VMAX on the bench to use Max Miracle through that Skyscraper ability, but hopefully we get the judges on that to have
really good
Grant
catch.
switch that Mew VMAX.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there it is.
There we go. It's big deal because...
Yeah, that's absolutely a big deal because now with the Mew VMAX being damaged, it becomes an extra target for John to chase down. And so here it comes, the proper cross Fusion Strike to use the Max Miracle off of the benched Mew VMAX. And so because you have to use the cross Fusion Strike, because there is no Psychic Energy in this list,
140. Okay.
yeah, you have to have 2 Mew VMAX in play at the same time in order to keep this loop going, to keep your pressure up.
So, well, I guess the Marnie did work out because it put the boss's orders back down to the bottom, and there's just a pass of the turn. You can't even use the Hyper Potion because there's no energy on that Duraludon VMAX, and Grant might have found an opening to get 3 prizes in a pretty quick fashion.
Once you take the first 3 prizes, John is in a terrifying position because you have to promote and rely on the Duraludon VMAX. This becomes a liability, and it gives Grant so much more time. Once you get that initial burst of almost finishing the game, now the Arceus V-Stars start to become liabilities as well if you're trying to evolve them or try to get more energy acceleration down. At the very least, John does have the Starbirth used and off of the table, so he's done his job. But Grant is now already beginning to get a nice lead in this first game.
That first cross, or that first Fusion Strike system was pretty bad. It was double Pokestop Ultra Ball. Is just going to have to use those 3 to thin the hand down yet again. Can find the last Mew VMAX. I think it might be prized.
Yeah, the bench is like pretty much already full now, so the Genesis X that are in the prizes don't matter too much. Or a Choreo even being found served its purpose to protect that initial Mew V. So I think that despite everything, Grant, everything that needed to happen did go according to his plans and is in his favor right now. John just after the Marnie didn't really draw in anything too useful. This Duraludon VMAX is stranded. Ooh. The Max Miracle is just a beautiful tool that this list has to make sure it doesn't fall prey to decks like this so easily.
Unfortunately, with that Pokestop discards the one of Silene in Grant's deck. That's the one supporter you can use to get back stuff. Granted, there is Palpad in the deck to shuffle back the Silene, but that's one of those cards that you'd always just rather have it in your hand.
Yeah, the Palpad coming through at the end to get an extra disruption card, find that boss's orders, etc. Having to use it to get your Silene back, especially in a matchup like this that you already know is going to be pretty long and pretty grindy. Already is locking you into certain plays that John can then anticipate.
Yeah, and just another cross Fusion Strike for Max Miracle yet again, and another card that is useless off of the top for John. Just another Arceus V. There's one on the bottom.
He's Pokestopping. Oh. He's looking for something.
Well, we got Tool Jammer, Ultra Ball. Those cards aren't really going to help here. The Tool Jammer can kind of help with that Choice Belt. But you're going to probably want that on that Duraludon VMAX on the bench.
Yeah, so here's the Tool Jammer. And Jeremy, you said it, the Starbirth not finding Professor's Research has left John in like this really precarious position, not being able to just draw into a new hand. Grant, the longer that you have to spend really not doing much with your turn, you're giving so much information to your opponent that your hand is bad. If Grant was thinking about playing a Marnie or something, you're going to definitely reconsider that and let your opponent just keep bricking. Grant might hesitate to actually get the knockout on this first Duraludon VMAX just to wait until there's a little bit of a stronger setup against the second one with actual energies attached to it coming into play.
Well, here the Cramomatic heads is a way to build that board better. And
yeah, just double checking the resources that are in the discard pile.
It's looking like Palpad might be the card of choice for this Cramomatic. Shuffle back a Marnie and a Silene.
Yeah, already being filtered to the top from the discard pile.
Oh no, just grabbing a Marnie, and could we see a Marnie yet again here?
Ooh, so this is interesting. I thought that Grant might reconsider even using Marnie because it seems like John's not doing much, but is trying to find some specific card here to solidify the position and doesn't really care if John has access to better resources or not. Maybe after seeing those cards come into the hand from the Pokestop, Grant wants to get a little bit more disruption in?
Maybe. I mean, just a ton of cards in hand for John. It's always kind of scary to look at, but when he's done nothing the past few turns, it's definitely something to be worried about. And there we see the Marnie. Both players will shuffle their hand, put it to the bottom, and then 5 cards for Grant, 4 for John.
And there's the hand.
4 power tablets? What?
Oh my goodness.
How many power tablets were in your hand, Grant? Come on.
And so now 4 cards for John. We have some energy. We have a Marnie to go again.
It is 4 and 2 quick ball. That's, that's quite a hand.
So we're going to quick ball away, quick ball, fail that, just thinning the hand down. We have 1 more Fusion Strike system, it looks like. There we go. Trekking Shoes picked up.
Echoing Horn.
Did you say my turn? No. Sorry, the static makes it really hard to hear.
Yeah, so there's just a little confusion there about the sequencing, whether or not Grant was going to end his turn after the Marnie, but he's still going. When it comes to Mew, you know that they can always just keep going. 4 power tablets. This is going to be some egregious combo later on in the game. We'll have to see. John's going to just go for the Marnie, put those back on the bottom of the deck, and maybe won't realize how much damage he's taking away from Grant with that play.
There is the cross fusion strike for the Max Miracle. Third time is the charm. Takes the knockout and gets 3 prizes.
Now the Crystal Cave is here to begin healing, but John maybe does appreciate leaving this Pokestop in the stadium spot here a little bit longer to make use of. But nope, just bumps it, just making sure. If you wanted to go for another desperate play, goes for Marnie, just shuffling the cards back in once again. And now that Duraludon VMAX is in the active spot, energy's attached to it, still completely healthy. These Hyper Potions and Crystal Cave now coming back into the hand are going to make it very difficult for Grant to freely set up 3 turns in a row of just wailing on this Skyscraper with a Max Miracle.
Yeah, and this is the hard part too, because thanks to that Marnie, John was able to use a Marnie of his own, and that means the bottom of the deck for Grant right now, 4 power tablets, Mew VMAX from the prizes.
And with 2 damaged Mew VMAX in play, John is now in a position of being able to take 6 prizes and just end this game. John is 5-0. You think with a control deck like this, there'd be more ties of just grinding the opponent down, but John is obviously competent at working into these positions of attack, 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 ending games. Up comes the Arceus V-Star thanks to Boss's orders. 288 points for the Mew VMAX to try to knock out the shuffle. Is happening though. These power tablets can be found to supplement this attack alongside the choice belt.
Yeah, either going for that or maybe a cross fusion strike psychic leap play here to shuffle back in the Mew that is damaged.
Drawing back up to 6. No power tablets found. The psychic leap does sound pretty saucy. We've got a Mew V on the bench.
Yeah, you could go ahead and bring up a Genesect or an Oricorio, force John to kind of retreat and get out of there. But again, you're just kind of delaying the game a little bit, but you're really going to need to work your way around this one Duraludon VMAX.
And now that Grant's down to 3 prize cards, it becomes very apparent what you are trying to go for in order to end the game. So John can automatically preempt a lot of those attempts to get the knockouts. Even if Arceus V-Star goes down and Duraludon VMAX is the final, Pokemon left in the active zone for John Owen, because of the way the prize map has happened, it's, that one prize is going to be the heaviest card that you're going to ever try to pick up in your life.
And there is that cross fusion strike for the Psychic Leap, bringing up the Oricorio. It's going to get knocked out next turn no matter what. But it's just a single prize here, and wow, John drew Boss's orders.
So now if we can hold on to this Boss's orders for when the time is right, again, this damaged Mew VMAX is such a huge liability for Grant. Without the 2 Mew VMAXs in play, you lose access to Max Miracle, and then you can't hit through that Skyscraper ability any longer. So John just has to figure out exactly what do I want to chase down here. Is the Arceus V really going to be a liability? Another energy attachment to Duraludon. This Skyscraper is getting a little bit taller there.
Oh, and John opted just to take the knockout on the Oricorio. With the Boss's orders, could have been able to bring up and take a knockout with a Duraludon, but that would mean retreating the Arceus. And does not find any energy here, so...
Yeah, just leaving it in the deck. Already a lot of energy attached to this Duraludon, so it doesn't want to go all in on it. There's really no reason to. But just leaving that, just leave the deck as is. After the shuffle, going to take 1 prize. Oricorio also did its job, prevented that early knockout in the previous turns. But nothing, again, nothing you see is too important for John that's prized. That Professor's Research might be nice to pick up later on, but Genesect now was found thanks to Grant getting that prize. And with Oricorio and that Mew VMAX shuffling itself back in with Psychic Leap, there's now room on the bench to have even more card draw. And with Grant now shifting gears to want to be a bit more aggressive, the Genesect V is incredibly well timed to facilitate these options.
Those power tablets still sticking together.
They came back.
3 of them on the top with Rotom Phone. Looks like Grant might find just one of them.
Oh, yeah.
That means 2 in hand after a draw.
I believe this is the turn in Marnie's. Yeah.
So then the power tablets just slowly stacking up that damage. Hopefully John is going to be compensating for this extra math here. We haven't seen any yet. And again, because Grant is playing this London variant of Mew that is a bit more reliant on actually using the power tablets for their intended purposes rather than just thinning the hand down. Draws off to the Avery, finds a Cram-O-Matic, could find the final piece here. Now, does Grant want to knock out this Arceus V-Star, or are you looking to chase this Duraludon V-Max first?
Oh, you are never going to touch that Duraludon V-Max with an attack. I would be pressed to say that it actually gets attacked into for a winning game plan. You're going to have to hope this hits heads. Does not, but you need to find a Mew V for the bench just so you can have another one. And wow, right off the top.
Let's go. Finds the Mew V. Genesect just going to keep drawing back up to 6. The power tablets are back.
I have the power.
They were sent all the way from the head back down to the bottom of the deck, shuffled, thinned, and reclaimed. The power tablets fished out of the bottoms of the trenches there, and Arceus V-Star does go down. Grant going to take 2 more prizes. 1 more prize left, and all we need now is Echoing Horn.
Echoing Horn and a way to get the Pokemon.
I didn't announce it. I didn't announce it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Looks like they didn't.
He jumped the
did
gun
not
a little
announce
bit
the
there.
attack. He was just saying how much he was doing. He was saying, "Oh, I have the knockout."
All right, so yeah, thinking out loud, spelling a little bit confusion on the table, but again, we've got the Arceus. It's all correct there.
There we go.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Now there's the knockout. Thanks that Cross Fusion Strike to get that Techno Blast off. And with that, John's going to need to figure out what to do. You got that KO on the active, but he's not doing anything. Just the knockout here, and now Echoing Horn Cross Switchers, the cards to win the game for Grant here.
So now this is where we start to burn down. Trekking Shoes finds Silene, going to discard, draws double turbo instead.
Oh, already has the boss in hand.
2 attachments,
We're
3 power tablets being burned. Back down to 3 cards in hand, going to draw 3, back up to 6, finds a cross switcher, needs to find the other one. Oh, 5, pardon me.
Yeah, that's actually really big here. 2 cards left.
Oh, God. Are those the last 2 cards he needs?
You can't thin the hand down at all.
So goes for Marnie.
No, you just needed the Echoing Horn.
So now...
Wait, is there a cross switcher left, though? Is there 2 of them?
So now we can draw back up. It's still missing that other piece.
Oh, what do you want? Arceus? Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Echoing Horn brings back Arceus V. And is that you draw into the final card?
Yeah, double cross switcher. All right, here we go. Grant able to pull off the victory in game 1 here, round 6.
Wow.
Thanks to not even letting John use G-Max polarization too much.
For a second there, I was like, wait, did he deck out? Is there no way to properly draw without decking yourself out? But finds the line, gets the final piece of the puzzle there after the Marnie to put your hand back and then draw it. What a wild game where your hand goes away and you draw so many cards, it just comes right back. Grant picks up game 1. John not able to hold back this new variant of Mew VMAX. Those middle turns with no draw power, just draw, pass, draw, play one thing, pass, really left him vulnerable to repeated max miracles to get that key initial knock on the Duraludon VMAX.
Yeah, and even with not grabbing a supporter off the V-Star ability, Grant still suspected that, so played the Marnie anyway, and that Marnie was just able to net him into a hand that he couldn't do anything, and Grant was able to capitalize. Max Miracle 3 times to take that knockout, and then Yeah, just playing those cross switchers to the best of his ability. Turn 1, just bringing up that Duraludon V, forcing the switch out of John, and that was the extra card off that Starbirth.
I wonder, how many Mews John has played on his way up this 5-0, if he's been playing, if he hit Mew at all, if he's been playing against like just the classic variant, or if this new variant from the London Open has really taken over as the dominant Mew VMAX deck that everybody is now onto. If you don't have that matchup experience, these small inefficiencies can really come back around to bite you in the later turns.
And Duraludon is a deck in where it's not going to play any of those cute Pokemon to kind of help you draw cards like Crobat V or B Barrel or even the Inteleon engine. You are just going Arceus, Duraludon, and hope that's good enough. A lot of the times it is. It even won a regionals doing that exact strategy. But here, with the matchup in particular against a Mew deck, you would think Skyscraper could take you there, Just having, oh, you have all special energy. You can't attack me. I'm going to attack you a lot. But it's really that addition of Echoing Horn throws the matchup into a 50-50.
Yeah, being able to bring the Arceus V back, have an easy target to grab 2 prizes, means that Mew can sidestep this threat that is so hard to take down. Even though you have the means to, because it's so telegraphed and it takes so long to do, you're opening yourself up to these hyper potions and whatnot. And in that first game, for John, the healing just never really lined up at all, even after the Duraludon was set up. The Hyper Potion had gotten shuffled back in because of Marnie, so the support tools you needed for your setup were never all present at the same time. And we'll see if there's going to be any adjustments here for John, if there's anything that can be adjusted, right? You executed your game plan, but then the second part of your deck that needs to complement that setup didn't come through.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, starting with the Duraludon V in the active spot. Not what you want to see here, but does have the Ultra Ball for the Arceus V to play on the bench. And I believe there's a supporter in hand for next turn, so it's what you want to see. It's the best you can hope for with a deck like this.
With Arceus V set up, we have the ability now to get the V-Star. We see it in hand, get that Starbirth ready to go. John is going to favor using that Starbirth aggressively in order to, again, complete that setup. And maybe with a slightly different pick of 2 cards, or maybe having those cards naturally in the hand and being able to Starbirth for your missing pieces instead is going to give John that little bit of a half step that will allow him to get set up in a much more, a quicker fashion, essentially, to start really putting pressure on Grant. Because Grant, in game 1, had those 2 Genesect prize, was already kind of off to a slower start that John couldn't capitalize on.
You see Grant debating here about using this Cram-O-Matic. It chose it over the Ultra Ball, thanks to that Trekking Shoes, and had the option to Pokestop first, but opted to Cram-O-Matic, flips the tails anyway, and yeah, that Pokestop would have been terrible. Discarding a Mew and an Avery. I think this is... Ooh, that's still pretty bad. Discards a double turbo and a Mew VMAX. Nets the Rotom Phone, though, so we'll be able to pick the top card for next turn, I believe.
Once the Rotom Phone gets up and running, I love this. You look at your deck, put the card you need on top, then you just draw it immediately. But yeah, we've got to make sure to shuffle the deck first before we put that on top. And honestly, this is just going to be a complete rerun of the first game, right? There's not too much that both players can do to adapt their game plan. There's no tech cards that you're trying to account for that surprised you in the first game. I think that both sides did their game plans very effectively, and John was just the one that kind of came up empty regarding, just poor draws in the middle game where that Grant was able to capitalize on. And that's something that's just naturally going to happen. But Grant already with the Oricorio setup, the Mew V and a Genesect is threatening to have a much faster startup than in the first game. So John also is pressured into needing that much of a higher quality draw to meet this tempo to get the Duraludon VMAX set up before it's too late.
Well, you can see John's hand right here with me, and there's nothing higher quality than an Arceus V-Star and a Professor's Research in hand. Yeah, that's a pretty good hand. Unfortunately, Grant drew the Marnie after playing the supporter for the turn in the Avery, so just opted to discard that. And you saw how important that damage on that Mew V Max was later on in the game, so retreats the Oricorio right away. And now John has the option to Starbirth.
Ooh, interesting. Starbirth before the Professor's Research. This, if you can just shore up your turn here, you're trying to save the research for later on where you really need the card draw. But again, this is opening up John to get punished by a Marnie, to put that research back. If you don't draw into that draw supporter, it could get very dicey from here.
Yeah, you can grab either the switch or the escape rope. You're going to play a boss's orders, so maybe escape rope is probably your best option now. Depending on what Grant brings up, you probably don't even need to play the boss, and then research for the turn anyway. But with that double turbo, being able to attack with Trinity Nova this turn, get a Duraludon V charged up, and we'll have to see if John actually decides to use this Professor's Research or not.
With the, instead of foregoing the Professor's Research for this turn, focusing on the boss's orders means that John is trying to surprisingly be a bit more aggressive in this matchup. You always think about Duraludon VMAX just kind of being this unscalable mountain for the opponent, but now that Grant has the Max Miracle, obviously can directly contest the Duraludon, John is indeed shifting the game plan to be a little bit more proactive here with the boss's orders.
Yeah, opts not even to play that Professor's Research or boss's orders, just takes the attack, gets 160 damage on to the board, and now it's Grant's turn.
The escape rope, beautiful there. And Oricorio once again stopping that easy knockout for John with the Arceus. The double turbo energy taking 20 damage off, the Oricorio taking 20 damage more.
Oh, you're Marnie, yeah.
So now Mew V has, it's the exact same scenario where the Mew V can now evolve into Mew V Max, and we can get Cross Fusion Strike into the Max Miracle and start getting these knockouts, start getting the early threats on the Duraludons. They are not evolved yet and are thus vulnerable.
Thankfully for John, though, that Marnie is a little bit better than last game, has that Professor's Research as well as an Ultra Ball to go find that VMAX for him. But Grant opens up with an escape rope off the Marnie himself, and this is going to be pretty big. Get damage on that Duraludon V with energy early.
So John promotes the Duraludon V that has the energy on it, so that way, while it's in the active, you have access to Hyper Potion because there's actually energy on it for you to discard, and you're making a big bet here that, okay, the cards that I have in hand are going to allow me to find the healing. There is a Crystal Cave, but John is hoping to get definitely some Hyper Potion action here to offset this damage that's about to come through, because as we saw in the first game, Grant just has to Max Miracle 3 times, and then Duraludon goes poof.
Honestly, all Grant is hoping to do right now is find Power Tablets and Choice Belt, be able to take the knockout in one hit off this Duraludon V. Thanks to its ability, it's going to have minus 30 damage of your opponent's attacks, so it essentially has 250 HP.
Tails.
With the double turbo energy on that Mew VMAX, you're doing a 190 with a cross fusion strike for a Technoblast.
Okay.
So you're going to need a belt and a tablet to take the knockout, but that's pretty easy to do, saying, and hope not to jinx.
Yeah, I mean, taking a bet like that versus a Mew VMAX deck with this many Genesect in play, the wheels are turning, and the Max Miracle is about to happen. And by miracle, I mean like the actual, like, miraculous kind that is going to be cross fusion system like you were talking about with the Technoblast.
Yeah. Finding the Choice Belt and a Power Tablet off of that
beautiful
fusion strike system for 6. It's basically what this Mew deck does. We've seen it time and time again. It's been in the format for a while now. And, wow, just bringing up the 3 energy is insane.
The knockout is locked in, but Grant still has plenty more cards to draw, plenty more sequencing to do. And with John losing out, right, on the energy that's attached to this Duraludon V, where do you go from here, Jeremy? You just have to sadly promote this other Duraludon, hopefully get the evolution and start from scratch. It doesn't set you too far behind, does it?
Well, now you need that boss's orders that's on the bottom of the deck, so you can bring up that Mew VMAX on the bench and take the knockout. But it is not looking good. Those energy are hard to come by, especially in this deck. They're so reliant on specific ones for your Duraludon VMAX. And here we see the Ultra Ball going to be able to grab that Duraludon VMAX, and you're going to have Trinity Nova to charge it up yet again. But that means there's essentially no energy left for John. That means Hyper Potion's worse. That means everything's a little bit worse. And this is the missing piece from the first game. No Hyper Potion means that you can't withstand the repeated max miracles. Grant has shown, I can take a couple turns off, perhaps with the Psychic Leap. If we can get, just promoted on the Oricorio for the knockout. Grant is going to try to exactly manipulate the first game to happen back to back, while John really, again, took a proactive stance with the escape rope, but had lost out with that Duraludon V. So we'll see if the professor's research can get a better hand here. There's another research for next turn. There's a Marnie for some disruption that could pay off big. With the power tablet down, there is less threat, perhaps, of Grant doing like a big unanticipated one-shot of your VMAX. Yeah, I believe there's 2 gone. The Cramomatic
during
the turn 1 had to discard 1. Grant was debating about that for a while. So only 2 left, but you have cards like Silene to be able to put them back on top of the deck with a couple heads flips. But as of now, right here, it's still looking pretty good, even though you have 2 damaged Mew VMAX in play.
The Duraludon VMAX is set up. The remaining energy to pay the cost of Hyper Potion is essentially double turbos.
Heads on Cramomatic. It's actually kind of funny there. Grant, Trekking Shoes, sees a Battle VIP pass, and usually you're just like, yeah, I'm going to discard that thing right away, but it's an item to discard with Cramomatic. Might as well put it in hand.
Trekking Shoes into fodder, into heads. The Cramomatic coming through now, finding that piece. We've already got a powered up Mew VMAX in the active. Another Cramomatic.
Another heads to go along with it.
And now this is where things get scary. John was anticipating perhaps having just a little bit more time to find his bearings here, but Grant with a double cram to, put together this 4-card Starbirth, getting the cards you need out of the deck to really solidify your position is meaning that, John is in a lot of trouble here.
4 cards and a couple heads, but needing a couple more here with this Silene. Oh, doubles. You get to roll again, right?
But Silene is off. Once this Arceus V-Star goes down, there's also just the threat once again of Echoing Horn to become the final 2 prizes that Grant needs. John just not able to get enough of a dominant position quick enough to prevent a situation like this from happening for the second game in a row. Still 10 minutes left in the round, and Grant looks to be closing in on a clean 2-0.
Closing in, but it is a little worrisome with these damaged Mew VMAX. Just one hit from that G-Max pulverization would be able to take a knockout, and just knocking out both of those means game for John. And Grant really has to kind of be worried about that. The bench is full, so you can't get a Psychic Leap going on like you did the last game. And there's no real way to clear the bench without John taking a knockout.
Yeah, once one Mew VMAX goes down, you can't max Miracle, so you're losing out on a turn of damaging the Duraludon.
Does need a retreat, which was good. Grant remembered that. Technoblast means you can't attack next turn. So.
Oh yeah, very, very good, very good. And just a little bit of damage going onto the Arceus.
Could be a little less with Hyper Potion. Doesn't look like John has it in hand just yet, but might have a way to find it.
Yeah, the double turbo on the Arceus V-Star means he can also pay that cost to get healed. And, Arceus Inteleon kind of does this as well. Hyper Potion, Charon's Care, to offset that damage, force your opponent to waste a lot of resources, but just gets boss's orders off of the Pokegear.
With that boss's orders, I think that actually wraps up the game if Grant doesn't have a Marnie next turn, just because you can take the 3 prizes off the Mew in the active spot, and as long as Grant doesn't Psychic Leap away, which that's probably what you're going to go for next turn, but as long as he doesn't, you get that other 3 prizes on the bench.
With all these Genesects, right, like the chances of whiffing on getting that Psychic Leap, you just have to find a Mew V to bench after that space is opened, but John still, you know, putting up a modicum of threat. You know, he's not absolutely favored from this position, but there is still a line, and at this level of play, the players are always going to go for it. The knockout comes through, Trinity Charge, just going to search through the deck and shuffle. 1 more energy going on to Duraludon VMAX, and then 3 prizes go up to John. Grant promotes the Mew VMAX, and now has his work cut out for him. Just has to find a Mew V to maybe Psychic Leap this Pokemon away. But once you do...
Yeah, that's so awkward now because the boss order's in hand.
Yeah, exactly. Where are you going to get your prizes from?
Yeah, it is looking like the game is being written in stone now, where you have the boss's orders in hand to take out the Mew V. And if you shuffle back the other Mew VMAX, the boss's orders is just easy. So Marnie needs to be the card here for Grant. I don't think he shuffled back a Marnie with the Pal Pad, just a Silene, focusing a lot on that. 2 boss's orders in hand as well.
So the Mew V is indeed benched after agonizing over it, but Grant's still trying to calculate, like, the boss's orders, like, is that coming through? Is there a way for me to play around that? But as you said, Jeremy, the game seems to be written in stone. Even though there's only 7 minutes left in the round, John is going to just fight tooth and nail to drag this to a game 3. Echoing Horn comes through to now pull out an Arceus V, which is checking the discard pile.
No, Duraludon V.
Duraludon, pardon me,
yeah,
is the one that's in the discard pile.
You just got to play it to thin your hand down, because that's the one card you can play to draw some cards with Fusion Strike system. And unfortunately, drew a power tablet, and I don't think there's much Grant can do here. The writing's kind of on the wall. You have to Psychic Leap this turn. If you don't, your opponent's going to take the knockout and win. So hoping to kind of stall the game here a little bit. You're going to Psychic Leap in the face of this Duraludon V.
Just try to leave it stranded in the active. Buy yourself a couple more turns to find the knockout. Perhaps, again, once you buy that time, you can get the Arceus V-Star. You can get your detrimental Pokemon out of play. This damaged Mew VMAX is such a huge liability. And John only needs 3 prize cards, so even if you get the knockout on a Genesect or what have you to take 2 prizes, then this Oricorio becomes a liability.
Oh, cross Fusion Strike, Glistening Droplets here. Dropping 5 damage counters on that Arceus V-Star on the bench, and you just got to play to your outs here. Grant is saying, yeah, John, you don't have the switch out. You already used Escape Rope. I don't think you can draw that switch.
Yeah, Duraludon V has 3 retreat costs, so double turbo's not going to do it.
Yep.
So now, when we thought that John was going to be able to close in on this game, Grant does indeed find a way to hang on. This Duraludon V might actually be stranded. Draw for turn. There's a Hyper Potion. You can heal this Arceus V-Star.
Oh, double turbo to Duraludon. You can Hyper Potion the Arceus to get rid of the easy prizes for Grant next turn.
And here comes Marnie instead. No Hyper Potion. Going to try to disrupt Grant. Whatever he was planning and setting up on that last turn, John wants to try to preempt it. Draws up to 5 cards. Still really nothing workable here. A lot of supporters, great in following turns, but Grant might not give you the time to even make use of those.
Count like, would I be able to evolve it right now, or because it was put out on his turn?
I think they're seeing
that is
if
an
you can
interesting question.
Evolve the Duraludon VMAX, but since it was during your opponent's turn, it's basically a full turn cycle.
Okay.
So you are able to evolve it into the VMAX, and that's the one bad thing about using the Echoing Horn on a Duraludon V and not taking the knockout, but it just stays a regular Duraludon V for this turn, and now Grant's back up to no good.
Rotom Phone, again, looking, even after that Marnie, right, the ability for this deck to just immediately grab the cards it needs. Look how thin that deck is. Game 1, Grant won it by drawing every single card in the deck, and it's very easy to see that that is going to be the way that this second game is going to go down. As long as you leave enough cards behind to take another knockout on the next turn, Duraludon V, I mean, with the damage reduction of hard coding, it does make it a little bit harder to take down. You're still risking having this Mew VMAX in the active. You have to find some other thing that could attack, but it's just in this really terrible catch-22 situation, you have to take the knockout, but when you do, you're opening yourself up to get revenge knocked out with this Mew VMAX.
All right, I kind of want to do some math, some counting a little bit, but we have 3 metal and a fighting on that Duraludon VMAX, right? Metal on the Arceus, and then there was 3 energy on the Duraludon V that got knocked out.
Right.
The one thing John's looking for is an energy to retreat this Duraludon V in the active spot. Maybe you just go for the glistening droplets, take the KO, and hope that, yeah, you're not going to draw an energy.
That would be another big bet for Grant now. John took the bet promoting that energied up Duraludon that got knocked out and lost some energy into the discard pile. So maybe Grant just has to pray and have some faith here in order for glistening droplets to get the knockouts.
So this is just the other play from the previous turn, being able to boss up that Arceus V-Star and Psychic Leap it back into the deck. But now you know that there's a boss's orders on the bottom of the deck, but John got a boss's orders in hand as well.
So here it is, now deciding on what to promote after the Psychic Leap, and Oricorio takes the active spot. So now it is over to John, still has the Crystal Cave, has lots of healing. Resilient Pokemon now in play, has to find 3 prizes, but with no Mew VMAX, it does give Grant a lot of time to get an evolution back into that Mew VMAX if it's found. Try to pull up the Duraludon V. Do we have? There's no Silene, so
the Silene was Palpatted back into the deck.
So we need to find Silene so we can get Echoing Horn and yada yada to get the Arceus V or back into the bench. So still a lot of things need to happen for both of these players to take the game. It's come down to the wire here. Only two minutes left in the round, but when your opponent has their back against the wall, they're going to make it as hard as possible for you to end the game.
As long as John plays that boss's orders on the Mew, he has the win this game, and there we go.
And G-Max Pulverization for knockout.
So there's the knockout. You take the next prize next turn. You don't even have to play through the +3 turns.
Mew V, yes.
And with that, this game's going to end up in a tie.
Okay. Yeah, John going to take us to game 3. There's no way for Grant to power up a Pokemon here to even swing in to get this final 2 prizes.
I guess you bring up that Duraludon V and hope he doesn't have an energy yet again.
That could be the way. I mean, even if there is a small chance for any of these players, they always play to those outs. Pokestop knocks the Crystal Cave. Genesect going to draw up to 6. Still thinning through the deck. There is a specific card that Grant wants, and it's somewhere in that remaining 4 cards. Cross Switcher.
Cross Switcher, yeah, but you know the remaining cards are going to be double turbo Mew VMAX, and so you do not want to Pokestop these down. It is literally the only way to win this match for Grant is to not have John win this game. So if Duraludon V gets stuck in the active for a few turns, that's the one way you win.
All right, Power Tablet. Was that the Cross Switcher?
That was the Cross Switcher. Cross Switcher up that Duraludon V. Mew comes in the active, but that does not matter. And with this, you're going to have a couple more Fusion Strikes. Maybe there's 3 cards left in the deck, so you want to draw them all. And just a pass of the turn. Does he have a way to retreat? Duraludon VMAX still has 3 retreat, I believe.
Yeah, it is a big Pokemon. Not having those extra energies from earlier just means this thing is stranded and not enough energy to attack. There's a double turbo attached. We have to find another, but nothing in the hand that can do it. Professor's Research.
Yeah. Professor's Research being able to draw 7, but the thing with this deck, you don't dig through a lot of your deck to thin it out. Just an energy. That's all you need.
Oh, no energy. All the supporters in the world here to cheer you on, John. But it looks like Grant is going to live for another turn. Time is called in the round. So can Grant close this out for a 2-0, or will he whiff and it becomes a tie?
And this is important, too. If time was called on John, which it is, so John was turn 0. So that means John will only have one more turn to take the game. And with the pass here, that means a boss's orders plus an energy would be needed to win. And with that hand, you can get the energy. You can try to discard your hand, draw 7, get some energy. But other than that, you cannot take that knockout on the active spot. And since this is time, Grant was able to pull it out.
Unbelievable. Grant stranding these Duraludons in the active has completely allowed him to take over this game. The
escape rope from the beginning, choosing the escape rope over the switch. Definitely could have been something here, but
a couple micro decisions from John just being punished here, being unable to get those final resources to get the knockout.
And there's just the G-Max pulverization for 250. Grant is turn 3, just passes the turn, and with that, Grant Shen is now 6-0.
Unbelievable. So is it a win there, or did they take the tie?
Win. So if the game 2 is not finished, the winner of game 1 is now the winner of the match. So you win the match 1-0.
All right, so they are talking to the judge to make absolutely sure. Maybe, you know, maybe you have to play out a little bit more.
Well, this is one of the time rules that is a little bit different. So
okay.
It comes up kind of, but in a deck where you're playing kind of a slower game like the Duraludon, it happens a lot. But it's also a win condition for a lot of these decks too, and that's how Grant was able to pull it off here, and pretty crazy way to do it too.
The grind there, we were kind of expecting, right, a Duraludon VMAX should just get set up and Mew would be struggling to take these knockouts, you know, go for a couple Max Miracles and then Hyper Potion and Crystal Cave offsetting that damage, and Mew would just be struggling the whole time. But because John always seemed to be missing 1 or 2 cards here and there, was never able to truly get that dominant setup that Duraludon VMAX is known for. And then at the very tail end of the round, Grant finding the line to strand the Duraludon instead and drag it out to where there was no way for him to end the game was just a stroke of genius.
Just great heads-up play from Grant. That is literally the only way you could lose there, is your opponent being able to take that knockout and then going into a game 3, just having the resources left. There was only 3 cards left in the deck at the end of the game, and Grant saving those cross-switchers till the very end.
Yeah, the cross-switchers, just amazing. The ability to predict how you can end the game. Like, when it comes down to the wire like that, we see it all the time. These high-level players are scrambling to find these completely ridiculous outs that you wouldn't even start playing towards. And they'd already fathomed that this is the way I need to win the game, and they've been playing towards it for several turns already.
Canceling clone. Yeah, it's just the way you have to play that matchup. You have to play to all your outs. Seeing that you knocked out 3 Energy Duraludon V earlier on in the game, and your opponent was kind of having to discard a double turbo here and there, and you just kind of sense a little blood in the water, you know?
Yeah, once the players like kind of get set up and things come down to the wire, they are trying to take care of everything at their disposal. But the judges still have to clear up a few things about that game before we can find